There's frosting on the edge of the table, and a tiny cake with messy handwriting that says, "Happy first birthday, Leo." Stephen is lifting our son into the air, making him squeal and kick with joy. And for a second, everything feels whole. But 1 year ago today, I was on the floor of a wedding hall, bleeding and humiliated, 9 months pregnant, and hit in the head by my own father. Hi, I'm Vanessa Carter. I'm 31 years old. I'm a mother, a wife, and a survivor. Not of an accident or a disaster, but of the kind of betrayal that doesn't leave bruises you can see. The kind that hides under polite smiles and family photos. The kind that twists itself into the people who raised you and teaches you not to expect anything different. I grew up invisible in my own home. My mother, Barbara, never really looked at me unless she was adjusting her lipstick in the mirror, behind me. My father, Charles, barely spoke unless it was to nod at something my younger sister, Jessica, said. And Jessica, she was everything I wasn't. Beautiful, celebrated, the golden child. She could breathe and get applauded. I could achieve, struggle, cry, and it'd be met with silence. When I got into college on my own, no one noticed. When I built my own event planning business from scratch, they didn't say a word. And when I told them I was pregnant, they looked at me like I'd announced a funeral. "You're pregnant? With that job? Who's going to take care of you?" My mom asked, not even bothering to fake a smile. My dad didn't even lift his eyes, just turned the page of his newspaper. I remember feeling something inside me snap that day. That's when I stopped expecting anything from them. At least that's what I told myself. But I hadn't let go. Not really. Because when Jessica sent me an invitation to her wedding, the grand, glittering event for the family's perfect daughter, I didn't throw it away. I should have. I should have protected myself. Instead, I walked into that room 8 months, pregnant, holding Stephen's hand, and still clinging to the tiniest hope. The part of me that was still that little girl, just wanting her family to see her, to choose her, to say, just once, that I mattered. I didn't know that day would change everything, that it would break what little I had left. But it did. And somehow, it also built something new. So if you're watching this and wondering how someone survives being shattered by the people they trusted most, I hope my story answers that. Not with perfect words or pretty endings, but with truth. Because the people who were supposed to love me, they broke me. But they didn't bury me. 2 weeks before the wedding, it arrived. A white silk envelope, thick and glossy, with gold lettering pressed so deep you could feel it with your fingertips, tied in a soft blush ribbon. Elegant, flawless, over the top, just like everything Jessica did. Stephen found it in the mailbox and placed it gently on the kitchen table. I just stood there staring at it, my hands hovering above the ribbon without pulling it loose. It looked more like an announcement for a royal coronation than a wedding invitation. "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Jessica Carter and Brandon Lively." Even the names felt rehearsed, like someone had cast them in a movie and I was the extra who got cut from the final scene. Stephen didn't say anything at first. He just watched me with those calm, steady eyes that never tried to fix me, only hold space for me. "Do you want to go?" he finally asked. Soft, like he already knew the answer wasn't simple. And it wasn't. Because there was a part of me that wanted to tear that envelope to shreds, throw it away like all the ignored birthdays and empty holidays I had spent hoping they'd call. But another part, the stupid, stubborn little girl part, still wanted to believe there might be a place for me at that table. That maybe this time they'd see me. Maybe this time they'd treat me like I mattered. That part of me hadn't died yet. I wanted to say no. I wanted to say I was done with them. But the truth, I didn't want to regret not going. I didn't want to sit at home on the couch and wonder if I missed the moment they finally let me in. Stephen reached for my hand, his thumb tracing slow, gentle circles over my skin. "Then we'll go," he said, like it was that simple. "And if at any point you feel uncomfortable, we leave. No explanations. Just say the word." That's what I love about him. No games, no guilt trips. Just love that feels safe, love that stays. On the morning of the wedding, I stood in front of the mirror, trying to zip up the only dress that didn't make me feel like a balloon, a soft navy gown that still fit over my 36-week belly. My back ached. My ankles were swollen. I was exhausted. But I put on a little makeup, curled my hair as best I could, and clipped in the sapphire earrings Stephen gave me for our last anniversary. I looked tired, but I also looked strong. Strong enough to walk into that place, on my own terms. As we drove to the venue, Stephen rested his hand on my leg the whole time. Every so often he'd glance over like he was checking if I was still okay. I kept telling myself I could do this. Just smile. Just survive. I'd done it 100 times before. Family dinners, holiday parties, every event where I showed up and disappeared at the same time. But this time felt different. Bigger. Louder. And somewhere deep down, something in me already knew. This wasn't going to be just another night of disappointment. This was going to be the day everything changed. I just didn't know how much, not yet. The moment we pulled up to the Evergreen estate, I felt it. That old weight settle into my chest. The building was massive, like a palace. Marble columns, gold-trimmed doors, fountains that served no purpose except to scream money. The parking lot glittered with luxury cars. Guests in designer gowns and polished tuxedos strolled up the steps like they belonged in a magazine spread. And right away, I knew. I didn't belong here. Not just in the expensive sense, but in that deeper way, the emotional kind. The kind that says, "You're not wanted." Stephen squeezed my hand gently. I didn't say anything, just nodded, trying to convince myself that I could handle this, that I could walk through those doors and be okay. Inside, the air smelled like roses and expensive perfume. Everything was white and gold, towering floral arrangements, glimmering chandeliers, candles on every surface. It looked like something out of a bridal catalog. It was beautiful, yes, but also cold, performative, like no one here was actually happy, just dressed up for the illusion of it. We weren't greeted by my parents. Or Jessica. Not even a cousin or aunt. A woman in a headset, one of Jessica's assistants, I guessed, walked up with a practiced smile and handed us a small envelope. "Here's your table assignment," she said, already looking past us. It read, "Reserved for overflow seating." Overflow. Like we were extra luggage someone didn't know where to store. I looked around the ballroom, scanning for a familiar face, someone who might wave, nod, acknowledge me. Instead, I saw my mother standing near the stage, draped in a floor-length ivory gown with diamond accents, her hair perfectly pinned up. She looked untouchable. My father was nearby, sipping champagne and talking to some man I didn't recognize. Neither of them looked my way. Then I saw Jessica, in a blush wedding dress that shimmered under the lights, her smile wide for the cameras as bridesmaids fluffed her train. She looked like a queen surrounded by her court. And me? I was the afterthought. Even my table reflected it. Stephen and I were placed in a back corner near the kitchen doors. The linens were wrinkled, the cutlery mismatched. It felt deliberate. Stephen pulled out my chair and waited for me to sit. I gave him a small smile. "It's fine," I whispered. We knew this could happen. He didn't argue. He just leaned over and kissed my forehead. "I'm gonna step outside for a minute," he said, checking his phone. Need to take a call before the ceremony starts. I'll be right back. I nodded, watching him head toward the exit. I stood up slowly to stretch my legs. My back was aching, and I just needed a second to breathe. That's when I heard her. Vanessa. I turned. Jessica was standing a few feet away, her dress sparkling like 1,000 tiny mirrors. Her curls were arranged in that effortless, expensive-looking way. She looked stunning, of course. Her smile, however, didn't reach her eyes. "You're really showing, aren't you?" she said, her tone sugar-sweet and sharp all at once. "I'm 9 months in," I replied calmly. "He's healthy." She nodded, slowly scanning me up and down. Her eyes landed on my dress. "You couldn't find anything more flattering?" I bit the inside of my cheek. The music had lowered. Guests were settling into their seats, and photographers moved around adjusting lights. I didn't want a scene. "Jessica," I said quietly, "I'm not here to fight. I came because I care about you, even if you don't feel the same about me." For a second, something flickered across her face. Not guilt, just irritation. And then she said flatly, "Then prove it." She pointed to one of the tall vases near the main aisle. A ridiculous marble thing, maybe 3 feet tall and filled with branches and roses. "The photographers say it's blocking the shot. Move it up front." I stared at her. "You want me to move that?" My voice was low. "It's not that heavy. Unless, of course, pregnancy's made you completely useless." My hands trembled. At my sides. I looked around. No one was watching. The room had moved on. I tried to take a breath, to stay grounded. "Jessica, I'm 37 weeks pregnant. I shouldn't be lifting anything. And you know that." She stepped in closer. Her voice dropped to a hiss. "Then why are you even here?" That's when I turned. I couldn't do this. I couldn't stand there and let her bait me. I turned away, slowly, trying to walk back to my seat. And then she shoved me. It wasn't a gentle push. It wasn't a mistake. It was hard. Deliberate. I gasped, stumbling. My belly twisted with a sharp pain, and my knees buckled. I fell hard onto the marble floor, my hands scrambling to catch myself. And then I felt it. A rush of warm liquid pooling beneath me. I couldn't even process what had just happened before I heard the gasps. A tray dropped. A camera clicked. My water had broken. Right there, in front of everyone. I couldn't breathe. The marble floor felt freezing against my knees, and my dress was already soaked. The warmth between my legs spread fast. Terrifying, unfamiliar. My heart was racing, but my body felt stuck, like it hadn't caught up to what just happened. People gasped. A waiter dropped a tray somewhere behind me. A phone camera clicked. My hands trembled as I tried to lift myself off the floor, but my arms wouldn't stop shaking. Everything inside me was screaming. Jessica stood a few feet away, frozen, her mouth open. Her eyes weren't wide with guilt. They were wide with fear. Not fear for me. Fear of what this would look like. And then my mother's voice cut through the stunned silence, soft, horrified. "What have you done?" But it wasn't directed at Jessica. It was directed at me. And then Jessica shrieked, her voice slicing through the room high and sharp. "You ruined my wedding." The pain in my back was pulsing now, sharp and hot. I tried again to push myself up, but my balance was gone. My vision blurred. People were whispering, backing away, pulling out their phones like I was some kind of sideshow. One woman covered her mouth. Someone else mumbled, "Is she in labor?" Another whispered, "Did she fall?" No, I hadn't fallen. I was pushed. And before I could even speak, before I could say a single word, I saw him. My father. He was charging toward me, his face red, his hands clenched, and then he grabbed something off a nearby table, a folded tripod. I couldn't process what he was doing, not in time. 1 second he was yelling, the next he swung it. Hard. The crack echoed through the hall. A sharp metallic snap that hit the back of my skull like a gunshot. The pain exploded. White. Blinding. I collapsed onto my side. My cheek pressed against the cold marble. My dress now sticky with blood and fluid. I couldn't even scream. I just gasped for air, the sound barely leaving my throat. For a second, the room went completely silent, and then everything erupted. Someone screamed. A glass shattered. People began backing away. I heard whispers all around me. Oh my God. He hit her. She's pregnant. She's bleeding. Did anyone call 911? Jessica's voice cut through again. Hysterical, shrill. She just had to make today about her. She always does this. I could barely lift my head, but I saw her. Face streaked with mascara, hands clutching the sides of her dress like she was the one who'd been attacked. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the cameras. And then my mother appeared beside me, crouching down. Not to help, but to lean in, her voice sharp and poisonous through gritted teeth. Get up. Don't make a scene. You've embarrassed us enough. I looked up at her, dazed, blood dripping down the side of my face. And that's when I knew. They didn't see me. Not as a daughter. Not even as a person. Just as a problem. A disruption to their perfect little picture. Then I heard it. Stephen's voice. Vanessa. He tore through the crowd like nothing else mattered. When he saw me on the floor, his face twisted in horror. He dropped to his knees beside me, panic pouring from every movement. Oh my God. Who did this to you? His hands hovered over my face, checking for injuries, checking if I was even conscious. I tried to speak, but my lips barely moved. The room around us was still chaotic. Phones flashing, voices yelling, people just standing there, watching. But Stephen wasn't frozen. He stood up fast, pulled out his phone, and dialed with shaking hands. Yes, this is an emergency, he shouted. My wife is 37 weeks pregnant. She's been assaulted. Her water broke, she's bleeding, and her attackers are still here. That's when people finally started moving. A few guests stepped in to help. Someone ran to grab a napkin for my head. Another man took off his suit jacket and folded it under my neck to keep it elevated. Somewhere in the crowd, a woman shouted, "Someone stop that man, he hit her." But my father was already backing away, muttering to himself, trying to explain to no one. Jessica was now crying loudly, mumbling about how unfair this all was. Not once did she look at me. Stephen knelt beside me again, grabbing my hand. They're on their way, he whispered, his voice shaking. I'm right here. You're going to be okay. I promise. And for the first time that day, since I'd walked into that ballroom full of people who never saw me, I believed someone. I believed him. The sound of sirens broke through the noise like a knife. Sharp. Urgent. A moment ago, the room had felt like chaos. Now it shifted. People started moving out of the way. 2 paramedics and a pair of uniformed officers came rushing through the double doors. The second they saw me, soaked, bleeding, barely conscious on the floor, the energy changed. No more whispers, no more cameras, just orders. Step back. Clear the area, one of the medics shouted, kneeling beside me. Stephen stayed crouched, next to me, never letting go of my hand. His voice was trembling but steady. She's 37 weeks. Her water broke. She was pushed, and then her father hit her in the head. We need help now. An officer scanned the crowd. Who did this to her? A dozen hands pointed across the room. Him, someone said. He hit her with a tripod. She was already on the floor when it happened. My father stood frozen, his face drained of color, mouth open like he might explain it away. But no words came out. Officer Grant didn't hesitate. "Sir, turn around and place your hands behind your back." My mother rushed forward. "Wait. This is a misunderstanding. Please, this is a wedding." But the officer cut her off. "Ma'am, assaulting a pregnant woman is not a misunderstanding." He cuffed my father right there on the dance floor. The sound of metal clicking into place echoed almost as loud as the gasp from the crowd. Then it was Jessica's turn. She had collapsed into one of the decorative chairs, sobbing. Not for me, but for herself. Her mascara was smudged, her curls now falling limp against her shoulders. "It was an accident," she cried. "She made me look bad. She shouldn't even have come. This was my day. My day." The officer knelt beside her. "We have video, evidence, and multiple witness reports. You're under arrest for assault." Jessica screamed. "You can't do this to me. I'm the bride." Stephen, still holding my hand, muttered under his breath. "Not anymore." Barbara tried to argue again, stepping toward the officer. "You don't understand. She's always been dramatic. She's always tried to turn things against us." But a second officer stepped in. "You verbally harassed a victim while she was bleeding on the floor. You're being detained for obstruction and complicity." And just like that, the three of them, my mother, my father, my sister, were all, in handcuffs, walked out through the very doors they entered with so much pride. Then came the final blow. Brandon's mother stood near the entrance, arms crossed, face hard as stone. She'd watched everything unfold. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through, the air like glass. "This wedding is off. We're not tying our name to a family capable of this." Jessica wailed louder. "No, no, please don't do this. This isn't fair." Brandon's mother didn't even flinch. "You've spent your character," she said, "and it's bankrupt." She turned and walked away. Her whole family followed without a word. The paramedics were lifting me onto a stretcher. One of them gently pressed gauze to my head. Another checked the baby's heart rate. "You're stable," he said, "but we're taking you to St. Grace. They're prepping the maternity unit just in case." Stephen walked beside me, his hand never leaving mine. And as the ambulance doors closed behind us, I looked back one last time at the wreckage of Jessica's perfect day. And I felt it. The shift. The beginning of something new. For the first time in my life, I didn't want their approval. I didn't need it. The ambulance ride felt like a dream I wasn't fully awake for. Sirens wailing above, but inside, everything was quiet. One paramedic kept checking my vitals while the other watched the monitor tracking the baby's heartbeat. I just stared at the ceiling, clutching Stephen's hand as tight as I could. My body hurt, but it wasn't just pain. It was something deeper. Like my whole world had cracked open and was trying to put itself back together all at once. "You're doing great, Vanessa," the paramedic said gently. "The baby's heart rate is steady. We'll be at the hospital in 5 minutes." Stephen leaned close to me, his forehead nearly touching mine. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I should have never left your side. I had no idea they would." I squeezed his hand, stopping him. "You didn't do this," I whispered back. "They did." The rest of the ride was a blur. Lights overhead, the soft beep of machines, my own breathing, shaky and uneven, and, somewhere between the panic and the pain, a strange sense of focus settled over me. Not peace, exactly, just clarity. I was done being afraid. When we got to St. Grace Hospital, the maternity team was already waiting. They moved fast, asking questions, checking stats, guiding Stephen alongside me. I heard someone call my name, and when I turned my head, there she was. Dr. Lisa Bennett, the same OB who'd been with me since the beginning of my pregnancy. "Vanessa," she said, her voice calm but firm. "You're safe now. We're going to take care of you and your baby." Stephen stayed right beside me through everything, holding my hand, whispering encouragement, wiping tears I didn't even know were there. The labor came on strong, too fast. The trauma had sent my body into overdrive. Contractions hit hard and close together. Hours passed in a haze of pain, breathing, gripping Stephen's arm, nurses calling out counts, and me pushing with every ounce of strength I had left. And then I heard it. The cry. A strong, beautiful scream that filled the room and broke something open inside me. Leo. They placed him on my chest, and I looked down at this tiny, perfect human, pink cheeks, wrinkled fists, eyes blinking slowly, and I sobbed. Not from pain, not from exhaustion, but from something I hadn't felt in a long time. Joy. "Hi, sweetheart," I whispered, brushing a finger down his cheek. "Welcome to the world." Stephen kissed my forehead, tears running down his face. "You did it," he said. "You did everything." We stayed in the hospital for 4 days. They kept me under close watch. The concussion, the blood loss, the labor. But for the first time in so long, I felt surrounded by care. Nurses who smiled without pity. Doctors who saw me, not just the headlines. And each night, holding Leo in my arms, while Stephen slept nearby in that uncomfortable pull-out chair, I started to feel something new settle in my chest. Strength. They'd tried to humiliate me, to control me, to silence me. But I was still here, and I wasn't going to stay quiet anymore. 2 days after we were discharged, Stephen and I walked into a lawyer's office. A sharp, focused man named Mark Wilson, who didn't flinch when I told him what happened. I held Leo against my chest as I spoke. He slept peacefully, completely unaware of the storm he'd been born into. "We're not just filing a report," I told Mark. "I want to press full charges. Everything. All of it." He nodded. "You've got the footage. You've got the witnesses. You've got a case." Because by then, the videos had already gone viral. The fall, the push, my father's tripod swing, Jessica's tantrum. People I didn't even know were speaking up. Women's groups, parenting forums, nurses, people who saw what happened and said, "Enough." For the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid. The case moved fast. There was no room for denial. Not with the videos, the eyewitnesses, the headlines. What happened at that wedding didn't just disappear into rumors or get buried in whispers. It was out there. It was real. And the world had seen it. Mark, our lawyer, laid it all out in court. The footage showed everything. The push, the fall, the blow to my head, and my mother crouching beside me. Not to help, but to hush me. The testimonies from guests painted the same picture. Cruelty in plain sight. There were no loopholes, no excuses, no misunderstandings. Barbara tried to spin it as a family disagreement that had spiraled. My father claimed he panicked. Jessica sobbed about how much pressure she was under and how the day had gotten away from her. But the courtroom didn't buy it, and neither did the judge. On a quiet Thursday afternoon, the verdict came down. Guilty on all counts. Assault, endangerment of an unborn child, obstruction, emotional abuse, no possibility of early parole. Each of them, my mother, my father, my sister, sentenced to time behind bars. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I just sat there, Leo sleeping against my chest, Stephen's arm wrapped around me. And I exhaled, like I'd been holding my breath for 31 years. This wasn't revenge. This was truth. This was what accountability looks like when you stop apologizing for being hurt. When you stop hiding what people did to you just because they share your blood. After the trial, we went home. Not the house I grew up in, but Stephen's childhood home. It's a cozy 2-story with a wraparound porch and a little garden out back. His parents passed a few years ago, but the house still feels warm, like it was waiting for us to bring it back to life. And that's what we did. We painted Leo's nursery with soft blue stars and hand-drew animals on the walls while he napped. Stephen went back to work on a flexible schedule, and I slowly rebuilt my event planning business from home. But this time, I wasn't working to escape the pain. I was working because I loved it. Because I wanted to show my son that dreaming doesn't have to mean running. We made our own traditions. Friday pizza nights, Sunday pancakes, random dance parties in the kitchen, Leo giggling in his high chair while Stephen twirled me around, barefoot. Nothing fancy. Just real. Just ours. And now, here we are, 1 year later. Back in the living room. Balloons tied to the chairs. A tiny cake that says, "Happy first birthday, Leo." His little feet wobbling across the rug in a dinosaur onesie. Stephen lighting the candles. The sun pouring through the windows. The kind of moment I never used to think I'd have. I watch them both. My son. My husband. And I feel it again. That quiet peace. That steady joy that doesn't need to shout to be real. Leo claps his hands as we sing. Stephen helps him poke a finger into the frosting, and I scoop him up, laughing through the tears already forming in my eyes. I look at the photo on the side table, the one from the day the verdict came in. Me, holding Leo, Stephen's arm around my waist. My eyes in that photo aren't tired. They're sure. They're proud. And I whisper, almost to myself, he'll grow up with love, not control, with safety, not silence. And the truth is, so will I, because the past doesn't owe me anymore. And it never will again. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters. And don't forget to subscribe for more true stories like this one. Thank you for listening.